warm for this coat, actually. I got all my vents open, I'm glad I do. God, talk about construction. So they ripped out the entire entrance to Garden of the Gods. I believe they're putting in a roundabout, but right now 30th, which is the road that I'm on right now, doesn't go through. So I can't keep going past the visitor center and connect up to like Garden of the Gods road and stuff. The road doesn't exist anymore. I will say this is something that has needed to happen for a long time. It's just really impressive to see them doing it. So yeah, right now this is the only way into Garden of the Gods. Alright, let's turn some music down. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's gonna look cool when it's done, and it'll probably be way easier to get in and out of there because it's been a nightmare for years. But yeah, I'm back over here in Garden of the Gods because I have 6 days until I leave, and I wanted to talk to you about bike stuff. I think I've talked to you about everything except for specifically what luggage I'm using and the modifications that I've done on the bike. And so I wanted to just do a couple of laps over here at Garden of the Gods and go over that stuff with you. I'll try and keep this, kind of in order by like the type of modification, but if I jump around a little bit, I apologize. I do want to preface this by saying this is by no means a comprehensive list of modifications that need to be done to the Tenere. This is simply the ones that I chose to do, and also the ones that I chose to do because I'm going to be living on this bike for the foreseeable future. Like, I anticipate quite probably being on this bike for the next several years, and so these are the ones that I wanted to do to be able to make it more comfortable to do that kind of a trip. You could absolutely buy a Tenere 700, ride it off the factory floor, and go do a BDR or some other, fairly significant trip. You don't have to modify the bike at all for it to be a really nice bike. This is a 2021 Tenere 700. I believe it was manufactured in December of 2020. I did technically buy it used, as you saw in my previous video, but I bought it with 47 miles on it, so it was essentially new. We'll start with protection. How about that? Handguards. These are highway dirt bikes. They're a Colorado company. I used the same handguards on the 690, and I'm really impressed with them. They are probably one of the strongest handguards out there, if not the strongest, and the biggest reason is it integrates into your top clamp. So this handguard piece comes all the way across and ties in right here. So when these are tightened down all the way, it's essentially one piece the whole way across. The only part of it that I've ever damaged was the plastics, but that's it. Like, they're just strong as hell. Other protection engine bars that I have on here are Adventure Spec. I do put engine bars on this bike just to protect the plastics and the engine cases. My 690 didn't have engine bars on it, and it's because the fuel tanks that were on that bike essentially acted as engine bars. I do really like the Adventure Spec engine bars. I did buy these. These were not donated. They're lighter than a lot of the other options because they are aluminum. Adventure Spec absolutely says they designed these to bend before they would damage the bike. Because they integrate into the engine case and, mount to some areas on the engine, you want the engine bars to be a sacrificial item before you break, a mounting bolt on your engine. From there, skid plate and other engine protection. The stock skid plate is pretty weak, like most are, and I did the AXP skid plate. Nice tough skid plate. HDPE is the same stuff they use to make cutting boards, so it's plenty durable. The nicest thing about it is if you do get high centered on a rock or something like that, it slides better than aluminum or steel skid plates do. It also reduces vibration a lot, so it's a much quieter skid plate. You don't hear, rocks and stuff tinking off of your skid plate when you're off-road. and it's lighter than most of your aluminum and steel skid plates while providing more coverage. It does come up on the sides and protects the sides of the engine, including the water pump on this bike, and it provides a linkage guard. Most other skid plates out there that are available for the Tenere 700 don't have that level of coverage, and the skid plate weighs more at the end anyway, so that's why I chose that. I do also have HDPE case savers, which I got from Triple Clamp Moto, as well as a water pump guard. All of them are HDPE, and they basically bolt over the top of your cases and prevent, a sharp rock or something like that from punching a hole in your case and ruining your entire day. Other protection that's on the bike, I do have a chain guide / guard. It's just the regular Yamaha one. It works fine, so nothing to really report there. I do also have the Camel ADV fork savers. It sticks over the ends of your fork guards to prevent you from cracking them. Nothing to really report there. They work fine. Let me think of what else I did. I did do a headlight protector from Alt-Rider, I believe it's the Alt-Rider clear headlight guard, because I guess the entire headlight assembly is one piece, so if you break the plastic clear cover that's on the bike stock, you have to replace the whole damn thing, and I didn't want to do that, so I got a clear headlight protector. That's kind of all I can think of in terms of bike protection. From here, let's talk about exhaust. So stock, the exhaust on the Tenere 700 is a little bit exposed. The way that they did the exhaust hanger is a little strange, but it puts the exhaust kind of out on the right side of the bike, so that if you fall to your right side, it's pretty easy to bend the exhaust hanger. And the exhaust hanger is welded to the subframe. Basically mess up your frame of your bike if you bend the exhaust hanger. And Camel ADV makes a high mount exhaust kit, which basically allows you to move the exhaust in and up into almost like a rally bike position to where it's protected and out of the way. So I have the Camel ADV high mount exhaust with a Wings exhaust. So the Wings exhaust sounds a lot better, you get a little bit better power, and it keeps the exhaust out of the way so that if I do fall over to my right side, which is going to happen, that I don't damage my exhaust and ruin my bike. And electronics. Let's go over all the electronics stuff that I did. I didn't actually add much in the way of electronics. The most obvious thing that I added was my nav, which is basically my tablet from Carpe Iter. I did add another USB outlet, which is right down here. There's a guy on eBay that sells basically a three-way splitter for the accessory plugs that come on the bike. The Tenere 700 as stock comes with essentially 4 accessory plugs, 2 DC, one on each side, and 2 AC, which are switched power, one on each side. The splitter that I used allowed me to take the AC power that's switched and hook up to 3 accessories up to it. I actually only used 2 of them, so I have an open one that I don't need to worry about. I ran the additional USB, so I have a dual USB that I can turn on and off. The other thing that I plugged into it was I actually used the DC plug on that side to plug in my heated grips. So I put Oxford Adventure heated grips on here, the controller's right here. My tablet is charged into the other accessory port. The nice thing about it is it's switched power, so when I turn the bike on, it turns the tablet on and it starts running. When I turn the bike off, it all turns off, so I don't have to worry about killing my battery or killing my tablet because I forget to turn it off when I turn the bike off. It takes care of all that for me. I did add the Cyclops Adventure Sports Aurora lighting kit to this bike. The thing that's really nice about that lighting kit is it is a full plug-and-play system. So it's made to plug into the accessory port on the left side of the bike, and it ties into your high beam low beam switch. It has daytime running lights, so you have a little ring that illuminates all the time and just kind of, as more of a hey guys, see me, don't run me over type thing. And then when I flip my high beams on, the full fog lights come on, and I, you know, get a nice night sun kind of thing to see where I'm going at night. What other electronics have I put on this bike? I do have my tire pressure monitor. It's also from Cyclops Adventure Sports, and basically all it uses is 2 taps, and it turns on when the bike turns on and turns off when the bike turns off, and allows me to monitor my tire pressures. I did try one of the cheap Amazon ones that are battery powered. You don't tie it to the bike, you just recharge it every once in a while, and it lasted about a month, and then it died and never turned back on. So I would stick to the Cyclops Adventure Sports ones. They are more expensive, but they will last the life of the bike. This is a quad lock ram ball mount with the wireless charger plugged into it, and it's just plugged into one of my USB ports, so that way when I have the phone on the bike, it just plugs straight in. I don't have to think about it. It is waterproof. That was the only complaint that I had about the SP Connect system that I fried on the Continental Divide. The camera, my rear-facing camera, is also just plugged into a USB outlet, so when I turn it off, I don't drain the battery on the bike. And that's all of the electronics. My controller for the tablet here is actually battery powered. I don't know what kind of battery they used on these things, but I have never killed it. I don't know how long I would have to try and use it before it would die. But like, for instance, when I was on the Continental Divide, I was using it every day for essentially a month, and I don't think it got below 50% on battery life. Like, the battery they put on those things is monstrous. I didn't have to worry about LED headlights or anything like. Oh, that's not true. So I didn't change out headlights or anything like that because those are already LEDs. I did put LED turn signals from TST, which are also lower profile than the stock ones, so that I hopefully won't knock them off when I fall over. I use the Camel ADV LED relay, and they work great. Let's talk about cosmetics just briefly here. I did do a fair amount of cosmetic stuff. I did do a tail tidy also from Camel ADV, so it just moves the license plate up out of the way and not as, you know, wobbly sausage as the stock one is, because the stock tail is not great. So graphics is probably the biggest cosmetic thing that I did. You can see these are Upshift Online. They're black rally graphics. I really like the look of them. But that was the biggest cosmetic change that I made to the bike. So I put Black Dog Cycle Works foot pegs on. They were the same ones that I had on the 690, and I love them. They're like standing on a step. And they have an integrated bottle opener on them if you need to use that. They sit a ½ inch lower than the stock foot pegs, and it's like 3 times the surface area. They're gigantic. Other ergonomics, I did do a sergeant's seat because I'm going to be on this bike all day, most days, and I need to be comfortable. And so it's a little bit wider than the stock seat, and the cushion is just a lot better. So it's a much more comfortable saddle than the stock one. I did take the passenger seat off and replace it with a Black Dog Cycle Works rack. It allows me to put my luggage on there a lot more securely. It has a lot of tie downs on it, and it's just a really good rack. I did take my passenger pegs off and replaced them with the Kriega OS tie downs. I'm using the Kriega OS system, so it just made sense to use that. And it allows me to not have passenger pegs, which were also shockingly heavy. Taking both of those off probably took 5 pounds off the bike. Other ergonomic stuff, I did roll the handlebars forward, but I do not need bar risers on this bike. I did put this little windscreen deflector on because the buffeting was hitting me basically right at helmet level. And honestly, it just made the sound on the videos a lot better. So that was the biggest reason why I did that. Oh, handlebars. I did do short levers from ASV. They're just more comfortable, and they're fully adjustable, so if I want to move them around, you know, whatever, I can. Alright, what other modifications have I done? Ergonomics, I'll call it ergonomics, but I did do the Camel ADV one-finger clutch modification, which is down here. It's a little blue thing. which basically just really smooths out the clutch pull. It makes the clutch throw longer, but it reduces the throw by 30% or something. And I'm pretty sure that's it in terms of ergonomics. I did put the Camel ADV Camel Tank on here. This bike has a fairly limited range stock. It's a 4.2 gallon tank. And so you're able to get right about 200 miles out of it before you're like really running on empty. Camel ADV makes a tie-in gas tank basically, so it's an additional gallon and a half. It sits opposite of your exhaust, and it gives you up to nearly a 300 mile range on this bike. My fuel light typically doesn't come on now until like 240 miles, and I know on this bike I have basically a 1.1 gallon reserve, so I could go another 60-ish miles on the reserve if I needed to. Other random stuff that I did. Triple Clamp Moto makes one of the best, I think at least, steering damper designs for this bike. So that's this guy right here. So you take your handlebar mounts off, it bolts on underneath there, and it holds the Scott's steering damper right there. I like having a steering damper on a bike. It makes the highway handling a lot better, but it also makes your handling in sand and babyhead rock gardens much more comfortable. The handlebars don't deflect as much, and you can really just kind of plow through stuff much more comfortably than you can otherwise. That's pretty much it. I mean, I changed the mirrors and stuff. These are the double take mirrors. I put those on every bike that I have. The other Camel ADV thing that I did was the head brace. So you can't really see it because my nav is covering it, but Camel ADV makes a brace bar because people had found the headlight and the navigation bar had a lot of like just bounce to it. And so he made a brace arm that ties it all together and eliminates that. So it's a much stronger system overall. I am using the Adventure Spec GPS mount to hold this in place. It holds it in the perfect position. This is basically a 7-inch tablet on my dash, and I can still see my entire dashboard. Let's talk suspension. The stock suspension on the Yamaha Tenere 700 got kind of a lot of grief initially because it is a pretty budget suspension system. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. You have no preload adjustment at the forks. You have compression and rebound only for the forks, and then you have compression, rebound, and preload for the rear shock. It works. It's not great, but again, it's totally doable if you're just trying to go ride a BDR or whatever. There's nothing wrong with the stock suspension on the Tenere. I mean, I took the stock suspension up Argentine Pass and didn't have any problems. Jimmy Lewis did a whole video about the stock suspension and put his recommended settings for all of the different suspension elements, and I used those and it worked great. I did want to change the suspension on this bike because, again, I'm going to be living on this bike. And one of the things that I really wanted was I wanted preload adjustment in the front forks. I know I'm going to be going back and forth between different weights in terms of luggage and, everything else, and I needed to be able to dial in the preload. I also wanted stronger springs in the front and the rear. It's undersprung stock, and I didn't want to be maxing out my preload all the time. What I wanted out of the suspension was I wanted more travel if I could get away with it without making the bike significantly taller. And so what I ended up doing was the Rally Raid suspension, which is actually Tractive. It's the company that makes it, but they make it for Rally Raid. So it increases your overall travel by 30 millimeters. Like I said, I didn't want to raise the bike by very much if I could help it. So I got a little bit tricky. So I know that this bike stock has 240 millimeters of ground clearance. So at full suspension compression, you have another 40 millimeters of clearance. So Camel ADV makes a lowering link for this bike, which lowers the bike by 20 mil in the rear. And so what I did was I put the 230 mil travel into the bike and then put the lowering link on, which lowered it by 20 mil. So it only increased the height by 10 mil, but gave me 30 more mil of suspension travel. So I got 230 mil of suspension travel front and rear, pulled the forks through 20 mil, and put the 20 mil lowering link in the back. And so I have a bike that is only 10 mil taller than stock, but has 30 more mil of suspension travel. So I have correct spring rates for my weight and gear, and preload adjustment to be able to get the correct amount of sag whether I have luggage or not. And the rally raid components are just higher spec, so I have better bottoming resistance, I have better compression and dampening. The entire system is just much more usable in hard terrain. One of the things that I was concerned about if I raised the bike was that it would change, rake and trail and all that stuff, and it would change the handling of the bike. And I didn't want to do that. And so by doing this and only raising it by 10 mil, I have not noticed any change in the handling of this bike. It handles amazing. That is it. Little things, I did put an alt-rider dual control brake lever, so it gives you 2 steps to basically use whether you're on-road or off-road. The only other thing that I wanted to talk to you about that I hadn't really had a chance to is specifically what luggage I'm using on this trip. It is nearly all Kriega, because I really like Kriega's luggage systems, but I am basically using the Kriega OS 6 bags as engine bar bags. They clip directly onto the engine bars, they fit perfectly, they're amazing. The rear luggage that I'm using is a Kriega OS 36, which is basically a soft saddlebag system that clips directly onto the back. And then I have a Kriega OS 40 rear rack pack, but it's basically an expandable rear rack bag. It'll go from 28 to 40 liters, and it's made to tie into the rear rack and just fits really well on the bike. All of that stuff's 100% waterproof. So they waterproof their system by using waterproof liner bags. I like that system. It's lighter than most other soft saddlebag systems. That's the main reason why I switched to using it. I had used the Reckless 80 and Reckless 40. I just really like the Kriega system. If you like ultra organizing your bags, that's maybe not the best for you because it is just basically a big open bag. I am using a Enduristan 4H tank bag. Don't have it mounted right now because I don't need it, but that's where all my electronics sit. And then I use Enduristan bottle holders on the OS 36 to hold chain lube and my bear spray and bug spray, stuff like that. So that's it for luggage. Other miscellaneous accessories. Let's see. I do have an Atlas throttle lock on here. I've had those on 6 bikes now between Tana and I. I've had them on essentially everything except for my Triumph Scrambler, and we didn't have one on the 1200 GS because it had cruise control. Otherwise, I've had them on every single bike that I've had, and I love them. It's the closest that you can get to a cruise control without having a cruise control installed on the bike. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I got Pickle Rick mounted, so that was the most important accessory. He went on pretty early on. I really like this bike. I like it even more now than when I first rode one. Everyone else I've had friend-wise and stuff that have tried riding the bike have really enjoyed it as well. And the next video that you should see from me will be the start of my trip. I don't have any other prep videos that I'm planning. My next video will be leaving. I'll talk about that here just a little bit, but I do plan on doing an iron butt down to Yuma. So from where I'm leaving in Monument to Yuma is essentially exactly 1,000 miles. And so my plan is to do it in one day, because why the hell not? So I'm iron butting it to Yuma, I have a couple of days off while I get new tires put on the bike, an oil change, and then I start the BDR. So you now have all of the information in terms of the bike, my gear, luggage, what I'm carrying, how I'm doing this. You know everything that I know at this point. If you have questions, refer to the videos, and you should have an answer. If not, ask it in the comments. I'll try and answer it. And if you like this video, give me a like, throw me a subscribe, and I hope to see you out there. I will be on the road by the time you see this video, which is pretty crazy to think about.